Hey guys, thought I would give a little update on where I'm at on this bike. Yesterday I went out to the property and got cut out pieces of frame from another bike and was able to make out my upper mounts for the back. I need to actually take the motor back out probably, and probably after I make all the rest of the mounts and any other like little things I'm going to weld on to hold boxes, and probably make a battery box and stuff first. But once I have it, everything where I want it, I'll take the whole bike apart and clean up some of my welds that's not very good, to where I have more room with the whole bike took apart. And but yeah, that's where I got these mounts. Is actually from another bike. Just kind of work my way around them with a grinder, and it looks like this front one right here on this side looks like if I just make a flat triangle piece, with this bolt pattern in it, looks like that'll work for that. The other side, I'm going to have to bring it over this way. So probably end up using pieces like this to direct it where I want it to go. I also gathered up some other stuff for it. A box of parts, CDI box I'm going to put on it. And, well, actually, if this box works on it, because the other bike with this engine is really advanced already, it seems. And I really don't care too much for this box, but I'll try this one first. Cut out another piece of a frame, just in case I thought maybe I might need this piece. And since this engine's a single-phase charging system, I needed to get a single-phase regulator. Kind of thinking maybe I might just mount it right here to where this air cleaner mount used to be. And got a starter for it, some grips, kind of big, but hey, if you have it, might as well use it. And then these are old CDI connections. They came off of the 250X wiring harness. They're good, so I'll use them rather than spend $7. And then here we got brand new piston and rings for this engine. And here's that dual gear. It goes on that one part. And then here's the other part of the starting mechanism, another gear. Cover, and then the cover for the stator cover. I do need a stator. I think it's like $15 or $20. And then I got like several gasket sets for this engine, so I'm gonna tear this engine completely down and put a new piston and rings in it, and probably new valve seals, just because I'm not gonna go bother cleaning everything up and just sticking this thing in there and then find out it smokes or something. So, and another thing, it kind of gives me a hint that give me a second to find it. The rings might be bat toast in this thing, because the intake manifold that came off of it, if I could find it. Well, anyway, I'll just describe it. You see this little O-ring that goes in here? The intake manifold that was on it, this O-ring was melted. I mean, melted. So, I've never seen one melted. I mean, I've seen them kind of flattened out, from the heat. But severe heat is terrible on rings. They lose their tension. So, kind of looking at, it's only like, the piston and rings for this is like $20, and then the gaskets are like $20. So, it's like $40 to $50 to rebuild one of these. So, The valve seals are like 8, so it just makes sense just to rebuild it. And then there was a mention from the last video about this engine here is probably going to be geared higher than the one that I was putting on. And when I was putting the other engine on, I was kind of gearing the sprockets so that it would be suitable for that engine. So the back sprocket is probably going to be too small. So what my plan is, which I was describing before, but there's a little sprocket or a little gear on the crank, and then you have an outer gear on your flywheel. I can change those out and probably just borrow them out of that one. But what will happen is every time you have a gear set, and then you have your selectable gear sets in the center of the engine, your gears, and then you have a gear ratio on the back. Whenever you figure out, you just count the teeth on this one, count the teeth on this one, and you divide it, and that'll give you your gear ratio. Well, and then you times it by whatever the gear ratio would be in here, which I have no idea what the ratios are. But you times it by that, and then you take that figure and then times it by your final ratio of your chain and your sprockets. So pretty much, I didn't have sit down and figure up different variables, but you change one tooth on this gear and one tooth on this gear, it could equal several teeth. I'll just say several teeth on the back. So pretty much you change this one, the gear ratio here, which you can change. It just, you always see comments of, well, that sprocket's wee little on there, but that's not going to have any torque. Well, not necessarily. You have several different gear sets, that's times by each other before you get to that. So, I could have the same gear ratio as somebody with a sprocket that's 8 inches round. It just depending on what gears I had before it. And the tires I'm going to run on the back of this are 18s. Yeah, they're 18s. So this thing's going to be whatever ground clearance I can gain. Like, I'll probably take this chain thing off of here. I really don't care too much for them. They just usually end up getting based on something bent, and then you're riding back with your sprockets dragging on it until you get some crowbars to bend it back. And so this right here is the lowest part of the bike always. Where your sprockets and your rotor is. I've seen, like my 300EX, my 250X hybrid bikes, they have like over a foot of clearance underneath this frame. But then underneath those sprockets, it's like 6 inches or so. Just guessing, but so I really like to have this small sprocket on here, even if I have to swap out some gears in the engine. And I'm kind of also looking at lowering the back end of this bike. It really seems like it's in the air. So I'm not going to change anything on the front. I think it sits pretty good. I think I can lower the back end of this frame, and the bike will still look right. And as rare as this bike's getting to be, I don't think anybody really even noticed. But pretty much I have another piece of a frame I cut out, and I'm going to look at trimming off stuff off of this, and you can see the original mount where it goes, down in here. Weld this other thing in here, kind of lower the back end of this bike, and then being that I'm putting this shock more on a tilt, it'll make it weaker. So I'm hoping to be able to get these rings off of here if I can't, I got another shock that I might try. But if I can get these rings off of here, I can take this thing completely apart, clean it all up real nice. This shock does work good, but I can make a spacer to put in on. See, this is all thread right here. I can make a spacer to put in here so that I can gain more adjustment. So I think it's about maxed out, but that'll make it so I can bring back the strength to it, and hopefully it doesn't mess with the dampening too much. But another thing too with lowering this back in, it gets my chain situation to where it's a little bit better, as far as like this is just kind of touching this. I haven't really tried to adjust. Right now the bike's kind of sitting on a jack because that shock's out. But you know, trying to get this chain set up so that it stays around the same tightening, tension on it as the suspension travels. You don't want it to get super tight. It's kind of one of the things you kind of got to work around. Like if you notice, the whole time I've been putting this engine in, I have a chain on it somehow. For two reasons. One is to make sure the chain tracks good, and also trying to check the suspension to see how it's affecting the tension on the chain as the suspension travels. One bike I have, the pink one, as the suspension travels, the chain gets super loose. So on it, when I tighten the chain up, I actually put the chain like super tight, because when you sit on it, then it has pretty much about the tension that it should have when you're sitting on it, and then when you jump it, it's super loose. So I want to start out on it with a super tight chain. And then the white bike, I actually have the chain a little loose on it, because as the suspension travels on it, the chain kind of gets tighter. So pretty much the chain will be looking like, oh, that's so loose it looks like it's going to fly off, but when it gets put into a predicament where it could fly off, it's tighter because it just came off of a jump or a big bump, and the chain was actually tighter at that moment in time. But it is super hard to get these things to work properly. Really, I think how they should make them is where this front sprocket is, they should be, they should try to configure them to where this hinging point on this arm is literally on the engine. So then, the whole swing arm could move, no matter what position it would be in, it would be the same tension. That would be more ideal. I've seen an engine, I think it's a GZ250 Suzuki engine. It's actually kind of set up like that. It's really hard to get this stuff to work out the way you really want it. So, yeah, I got the mounts in, and another thing about this, I ended up standing this engine up even more, trying to get the chain situation to work right. So what I think I'm going to do, this carburetor is like butted up against the frame right here. So I think I'm actually going to notch the frame out so that a piece of angle iron can fit inside of it. And then, it'll still be just as strong because it'll be fast, it'll be sealed up on each end. But it'll give me a little portal for this stuff to fit in here. So I'm probably just going to get a permanent marker and kind of mark it what I want. And then I'll just run the cutoff wheel in there, notch it out. So I'm just getting sick and tired of this carburetor crap. And well, I guess that's about it for today. I think I'm gonna try to work on cleaning up this shock, see if I can get it apart. The paint on it looks really sweet. I don't know how, the whole end-to-end wise, but when you wipe it off, it's really super looking cool. Paint still on there. So, clean that spring up and then just paint the paint the rest of the shock up nice and get this plastic piece out of here, clean it up. And you know, first time out this thing will be covered in mud and you'll never notice anyway, but in the end, you know, when I have a complete bike sitting here, it'll look nice. Take some document pictures and go out and dip it in the mud. Alright, well, thanks for watching.